Okay, good morning, world. I have hopefully sorted out a temporary solution to the phone issue, and hopefully we won't have any problems with the phone moving this morning, falling down. So I was going to make a video today about a completely different topic, but I've decided firstly to talk about a little bit more about some of the stuff that I touched on in the video that I posted yesterday, because I want to clarify some things as well. And so after rewatching that video myself, after I posted it, I did want to address when I said in that video about people are sort of walking around in life, kicking the dirt and feeling sorry for themselves. I just want to clarify that I'm not saying that, people shouldn't ever feel sorry for themselves. I'm not saying that, life isn't really tough and can get you down. I just meant more so that we are in the habit of seeing the negatives more than we're in the habit of seeing the positives in our life. And for some reason the negatives sort of outweigh, don't they? It's like the negatives can override your general impression, your overall impression of life. And that's what I was talking about with resilience, is, to have a more resilient mind, I think, is also to have overall your perspective of life is more positive. Overall, that doesn't mean that you don't have, tough times or bad days, or, I'm not saying mental health issues are your fault, like anything like that. And I want to clarify too that, my life has been far from perfect. And, maybe I should be explaining a little bit more about myself, so that anyone who does watch these videos has a bit more understanding of where I'm coming from, and that you're not alone if you're ever having any mental health problems, or if you're having troubles in your life, or you're struggling, or you're feeling like things are just piled up against you and the world's unjust. You are not alone. I have been there. Believe me, I have been there. So maybe I should spend a few minutes, maybe more, just talking a little bit about my life, just briefly, and if there's anything that I bring up that you want to talk further about, there's a topic, then comment about it in the comments, and we can talk further about that, because I think I know everyone goes through a lot in their life, but maybe some people might possibly go through a bit more, or maybe some people are born into good families and then still turn out to have good lives, and so that there are people who are very blessed, have good lives, and there are people who born into a life of tests and lessons. And I was born into a family where my mother was a only child to a migrant family to Australia. Now, my mother was actually born in that country as well. She was not born in Australia. They came here when my mother was about 5. And so having a European family that has quite strong opinions and traditional values and things like that, I understand that would have been challenging for my mother growing up, even here in Australia, because at home she had her very strong traditional parents in comparison to her friends who had Aussie parents who maybe were a bit more laid back and relaxed about things. And so my mother had a lot of difficulty growing up, and maybe that sort of shaped a bit who she became. And I acknowledge her. I acknowledge that my mum had her challenges. Excuse me. And then as my mother became an adult, she was very early young. She was married by the time she was 20, and I think she had her first child by the time she was 20. So she was, went from having a difficult childhood. I mean, she still grew up with money and everything that she needed, but emotionally difficult. So she, became a mother young. She didn't really have that much time to be free and an individual, which I think, probably is important, actually. I think it's hard on women to go straight pretty much from, your childhood, and I include teenage years in that, childhood, to marriage and being a parent and all of that responsibility and that expectation put on you. It's sort of like, and school and everything, like you just, where was your break? There was no break. And hang on, I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee. Oh, my morning treat. So I think my mother struggled because of the challenges that she had in her childhood, and then going straight into marriage and parenthood. I think she struggled with that a lot, and she wanted, I think, to party because the things that I have heard, or stories I've heard of then, and even watching some home videos that were made of back then, I can tell it was very much like, despite the fact that she was married and had children, then at that point it was a little bit party time and in the home. And anyway, there was a relationship breakdown between her and her husband, who is my older brother's father, and I have to say potentially my father, even though he's written on my birth certificate as my father. That is questionable because allegedly there was an affair taking place, and there was another man present at the hospital when I was born, who became my stepdad. and the father of my 2 younger siblings. So that's, I never got to meet my dad. My dad never got to meet me. My dad that's on my birth certificate. And, that caused a lot of upset for me in my life, especially, your teenage life and your adult life. It gets brought up in, different ways. And, there was nothing that my father ever did to harm my brother or I, or, for him not to have had access. I believe that there was some false allegations actually made up to keep him away from us, so that my mum could sort of make a clean change from my father to the new man in her life, and with my father not in the picture, not interfering or whatever. I think that she made up some stories because, by all accounts that I've spoken to, there was, obviously never anything negative happened to me because he never even got to see me, but even with my brother, who's 2 years older than me, I think it was more so the fact that he found out about the affair and got upset about that. My mother was maybe embarrassed and made up things as a result. Moving along, my sibling who was next born after me, he had a congenital heart issue and spent half of his life at the Royal Melbourne Children's Hospital, with operations and being very unwell and having tubes and things coming out of him, and he was never well enough to have a operation that could have saved him. And he died when he was 3. He was at home at the time. And that was very difficult, obviously. And I do feel, very sorry for my mother that she lost a child, because that's unbearable to even think about. That's, the most terrible thing that could ever happen, really. And I'm a mother myself. I could not imagine that. I could not. I don't know how people can cope with that. And, for myself personally, with all of that, I was, so I was only 5 when that happened. 5 turning 6. That was a very traumatic time in my life. I feel like there's a lot missing in my life from that point in time. Apparently I had a lot of time of school. My brother and I, we had a lot of time of school, and we lived for quite some time at my grandparents' house. We had psychological therapy for children and all this sort of stuff. But there's some time missing there. And then when I did eventually go back to school, I think it was grade 3. I was I had a lot of stress and anxiety and things going on still, and things were still very bad at home. My mother had tried to take her own life, and my brother and I had witnessed that, and it was very traumatic. And I was, so when I had started at the new school, I was crying a lot in front of people and making up stories about who I was. I was putting on different accents and stuff and changing my name, and I wet myself at school and all these sort of things. So I think it was quite a while for me to sort of recalibrate as a human and it was sort of like, I guess, toughen up for my life, for the cards that had been dealt to me. And, because when you grow up in a home where there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of neglect, there is a missing parent that you've got a lot of question marks about, you've got identity question marks, there was abuse going on, my mother was not a loving mother at all, and I do kind of feel, it's a touchy subject, because she lost a child, I do tend to sort of make excuses for her now. However, at the time, I was still very much a victim of ongoing mental, emotional, and physical abuse. And that felt very unfair. And I was actually very angry at God for a lot of my childhood. I used to question God of why he wasn't protecting me, and things like that. My relationship with God has been very, we've had our tough times. But I also understand that it's shaped me into who I am and the mother that I am, and even decisions you make in your life and things like that, Anywho, so I moved out of home pretty much as soon as I could. I think I was 16 when I started living at a boyfriend's house then with his mother. Because I'd already done my years with my mother, and I had been working a job since I was 14 and giving, I think it was half of my paycheck to my mother. What she said was board. She said that I had to start paying board because I had a job and I was earning money, and she wasn't working at the time. She was getting government benefits. And my brother also had a job at a butcher, and he also had to give my mother money. So really she was getting government benefits and then also taking half of our paychecks. So I would have to save up for things for quite a long time, when I wanted to get myself new things for my bedroom, or I wanted to buy myself clothes and things, anyway, and so I moved out as soon as I could, and my relationship with my mother throughout my adult years has been extremely turbulent. I've tried for my family's sake, my children, my grandparents, I have tried to keep the peace with my mother and mend things when I could and all that sort of stuff, for all of their benefit, and try to put everything from childhood and in the past, try to keep that in the past and not dwell on it, not, carry it, not let it burden now or the future. But my mother made that extremely difficult for me to be doing. She made lots of comments when I left a violent, abusive relationship that I was in. And I started a new relationship with someone that is my fiance now. And we've been together for nearly 10 years. But when we had first got together, I think it was like a year in, and I became pregnant with our first daughter. My mother made comments about, that it was nothing to be proud of, that I was having a child to another man. Basically, I mean, it is very double standards because, she had children to more than one man. And, so for her to, be judging me like that, and saying that sort of thing to me, was very hurtful. And she knew that the relationship that I was leaving was abusive and violent. And she was really just upset that I wasn't spending all of my spare time with her. She wanted me to go sort of run off and what is the expression? Just like run to her. She just wanted me to run to her and spend all my time with her and go get our nails done and do all these things that she wanted to spend her time doing, and that wasn't sort of how things panned out for me. I was getting, support from friends. And, when I happened to meet my partner now, it was the best thing that had happened to me because I felt loved and safe. And, so she became very nasty and said a lot of horrible things. And then it turned out that the abusive ex, which she actually never liked him in the past before that, that the abusive ex and her ended up talking somehow. And she ended up saying, there was messenger conversations between them where she was giving him support to try to take me to family court and things like that. And that was the absolute last straw for me with my mother. The fact that she would be so low and nasty and vengeful, because I had already cut her out of my life for the hurtful things that she had said since the beginning of my relationship with my now fiance. And we had moved away. We had, done the tree change from where we lived on the Mornington Peninsula to Gippsland, so it's several hours between me now and all of my family members. And I needed that space. I needed that distance to feel safe from my ex-partner. A lot of people think that you can just sort of go to authorities and get protection, but it's not really always as simple as you think. And it, that's a whole other video really, because the things that violent and abusive people can do to control you and put fear in you, and who their family is, and all sorts of things like that, isolating you by contacting everybody that you know and spreading false narratives about you and what's happened. It's a lot more convoluted than what you think sometimes. And when my mother vengefully sort of became friends with him, and did all that, and then he did end up starting family court matter, thinking as well that he would have the support of my mother and how bad that would look in family court. And it did not end up going his way, but that was, it was so much pain, really, caused by that. I really don't know that I could ever speak to my mother again. I feel like I gave her already so many chances, so much opportunity to have changed her ways and made amends. I really don't think that it's my responsibility to mend things with her now after what she put me through, what she, helped put me through, and my children as well, because, that's the other thing with family court and all that sort of stuff. Your kids are actually put in not great situations, forced to talk to a lot of strangers. It's not fair what people are put through, especially when, the children didn't do anything wrong, did they? And, I really was the victim of things that had happened in that relationship and after. And it's just terrible that, the authorities and the legal systems and court systems, they can actually be used to cause further abuse to people, to victims. And that is a terrible, terrible thing that really should be, more widely trained about in all of those fields and understood and acknowledged, and especially if there's proof from years earlier who the real perpetrator is and all this sort of stuff. It's just ridiculous. Bit of a game, really, but that could be a whole different video. I'm just sort of pointing out that my life has absolutely not been perfect. I've been through quite a lot of things, my ex was successful in turning a lot of people against me, including family, and all of that actually happened during the COVID pandemic as well. So it was just added isolation and upset. But again, I try to always find my blessings, and I look at my beautiful family, my beautiful children, my beautiful fiance, and I am so grateful. I'm so grateful for what I have. Gonna make myself cry. I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky. And that's what I mean as well about resilience, is you can go through some terrible things in life. And you feel as well at the time like it's going to last forever, or this is the worst thing to possibly ever happen to me, or to a person. And one thing that my fiance, he always said to me from right from the very start, is that nothing stays the same forever. Nothing stays the same forever. Everything changes. Everything is always changing. And that's something that I think people should try to take to heart as well. You know, sometimes you feel stuck in a crappy job with a boss who's just angry all the time and doesn't speak nicely to people, and you know, other people in life who are judgmental and make judgmental, negative commentary about, you know, whatever it is. Make you feel not good enough about yourself, whether it's because that makes them feel better about themselves and their life, I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about when there are situations in life, even with us, you know, we've had one car problem after another car problem with multiple different vehicles for the last several years. And it's crazy. Like, it's crazy. Some people don't experience that, but some people, it's like, where am I? Like, why do I always have such bad luck with cars when I buy new cars and, you know, not brand new, but, you know, secondhand, and then it turns out 6 months later, this huge, very expensive thing needs replacing, and it was so unexpected, you know, it gets put on the back burner, and you've got to be driving two people around, or, you know, there's just, there's, there's things in life that seem like it's lasting forever. Seems like a bad situation. It seems like, you know, bad luck is following you around. But you should really try to tell yourself, really drum it in. You know, everything is constantly changing and nothing lasts forever, you know. And really, I mean, you know, you don't know how long you've got, do you? I mean, anything can happen, you know, and you should really be grateful for what we have, um, and appreciate every moment. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I have things to do. But thank you for joining me for another video this morning. I'm sitting here now talking too long. And again, I apologize for that I am sick, so I sound nasally. And I'm not going to look the greatest in these videos because it is morning time. It's early morning time when I'm making these videos because that's when I am in the car by myself. And I'm pregnant and I'm getting not very much sleep and things. This is just what we're working with. Anyway, thank you, and I hope you have a blessed day.